Good morning, I'm Lenora Bresler. Welcome to the January 24th, 2017 edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Now we are in a multi-session series talking about how to study a biblical passage. And we've talked about the importance of praying, using different tools, including Greek and Hebrew dictionaries, your concordance, a handbook of Jewish customs or a handbook of ancient traditions. And then yesterday we talked about the importance of paying attention to the details regarding time. Today we're going to start talking about another significant detail that is often meticulously recorded in both the Old and the New Testaments, and that is the detail of location. Location often brings a huge dimension to any event or story in the Bible. So pay attention when the Bible specifies, as it often does, where something happened. Now, there are a plethora of examples of this, so we may even take 2 days on this. Let me give you a couple examples. One of the most well-known examples, which we also covered in the December edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details, has to do with the birthplace of Christ. Bethlehem, you may remember we had a whole session on all the various reasons why Bethlehem was the most appropriate place for Christ to be born. One thing that is very fascinating to me, which would require an additional tool for you to understand this, you'd need to go extra biblically to know this, but why is it that the shepherds of Bethlehem, and only those shepherds, were told the good news about Christ's birth? After all, not all the shepherds in Israel were notified, only the shepherds of Bethlehem. And we talked about that it was significant because Josephus, the great Jewish historian of that first century AD, and also other references, indicate that it was in Bethlehem where the temple flocks were being raised. And so, of course, this would have been appropriate for God to let these people know that soon they would be out of a job, since God's own Lamb of God, perfect, blameless, blemish-free, would be sacrificed once and for all, and their sacrificing of the little animals would no longer be necessary. But there are so many other interesting examples. Another one that I particularly find interesting is in the beginning of Revelation. The first 3 chapters of Revelation have to do with the letters, you may recall, letters to the 7 churches. Now, these were actually real churches, and when you look at the order in which they are addressed from the risen Christ, as apparently dictated to John on the Isle of Patmos, when you look at the order of those letters, they follow what was called the King's Highway, the way that travelers, including those who had mail, so to speak, some kind of communications to give, would have entered the region of Asia Minor. They started at the port city of Ephesus and then moved to the east and north in kind of a horseshoe fashion. And the letters follow exactly that pathway of what cities you would have met as you went through that King's Highway. Now, one of those cities, you may recall, was the city of Laodicea. And it was to this church that Christ said that they were neither hot nor cold, and therefore he was going to spew them or even vomit them out of his mouth. Not great encouragement, granted. Apparently he was kind of ticked. Well, what's fascinating about that is that might sound like very odd words to use until you know something about Laodicea. Laodicea was located between 2 other cities. One, and both of those cities, by the way, were very economically prosperous. One was known for its refreshing, very cold waters coming down out of the mountains. The other was on the other side of Laodicea and it was known for its hot springs used for therapy and medicinal reasons. Both of those cities were experiencing great economic boons in the time of John's writing of Revelation, and the city of Laodicea was struggling because its water was literally lukewarm, and therefore it was not very pleasant, and people did often spew it out of their mouth, or it caused them to vomit. So it's a great metaphor for Christ to use. These people understood what he means. And by the way, it's not just Laodicea. All of the cities in the letters in Revelation have things said to them which are unique and distinct to that city's location and history. Absolutely fascinating. I want to leave you today with one last example. We'll have many more tomorrow, but this is another one of my all-time favorites. It is in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. This is the very famous passage where Christ asks Peter who he says that he is, and Peter says, "You are the Christ, Son of the living God." And Jesus not only affirms that, but tells him that upon this rock, meaning this foundational bedrock understanding of who he is, I will build my church. Obviously, a very important and significant passage for any Christian. The detail that is often overlooked is where this great statement by Peter and Jesus was made. It was made at a place called Caesarea Philippi. Now, in the ancient world, many religions, not the Christian religion and not Judaism, but definitely the Roman religion, the Greek religion before that, and others, there were locations around the world which had very unique geological features. Oftentimes caves or naturally occurring gas locations where the ancient people thought this was an entrance to the underworld. And Caesarea Philippi was one of those places. The Roman religion at the time believed that there was a cave system, and there is a cave system at Caesarea Philippi. And you can go even to this day and visit Caesarea Philippi and see the recreation of pagan rites, dances, etc. in front of the mouth of a cave. This was known in the ancient days as the gates of Hades or the gates of hell. And Christ said in that passage that upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. When you realize that the disciples and Jesus had gone on a field trip, so to speak, to this very pagan, very well-known gates of hell location, seeing the pagan worship of gods, not the true God, but made-up gods, when you realize that Christ is saying that the gates of hell will not prevail against the foundational bedrock of the Christian religion, of who Christ is, it means so much more if you recognize that probably at the very moment that Christ was saying that, he very well could have been standing looking at the gates of hell, looking at those pagan rituals in front of the supposed entrance to the underworld. I'm Lenora Bresler, and please join me tomorrow for more The Bible, Delight in the Details. Go out and make it a great, great day.